You're listening to Shift, Human First Financial Guidance with Ross Marino.
Today, we are shifting the conversation with Zach Conway, founder, co-founder, and CEO of Seeds. Hello, Zach.
Ross, great to be here.
Glad to have you on here. I love what Seeds is doing. It's been a pleasure meeting you, watching the company grow. I've been able to hear you speak and see what you're doing at conferences. Really impressed. But before we dive into what Seeds is all about, how about a quick introduction on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So Zach Conway, co-founder and CEO of Seeds Investor, as you said. And so our platform is trying to introduce investing as an experience to advisors. That's our goal, is to help advisors really deliver on an experience. So that's my day job, running that company and working with advisors as often as I possibly can.
Excellent. And here we are with Seeds Investor. I feel like a few years ago, I never even heard the name. And then all of a sudden, everywhere I go, I'm hearing the conversation about it. And even just that phrase, investing is an experience, I started typing that. I'm like, that is so different. So before we dive into a lot of the mechanics, let's do the origin story. I'd love to hear where this came from, because obviously there was something you saw and said, you know what, we got to fix this thing. We can do better. Why don't you tell us how it all got started?
Yeah, for sure. So I always say I was really lucky enough to have a dad who grew up. Oh, I grew up with a dad who was in this industry for the last 40 plus years. So he's been an advisor since 1982. And so I've really been able to kind of see him build a successful business and always have a focus on experience, the end client, what's most important to them, and always kind of focused on holistic planning. So got a job out of school in the corporate world, ended up joining him in the business, and quickly kind of got into the seat working with clients and trying to be part of that planning process, and how could that experience overall be better? How could we be delivering more value to them throughout sort of the life cycle of our relationship with them? One of the things we were trying to accomplish as a business was, go figure, was to grow the business. And he had built an incredible company and a great sort of client base over many, many years. But how do we get to the next level? How do we create organic growth, forever? And so our thought process was, and this is sort of our general belief for the industry, we need to tap into younger demographics of investor clients, the accumulators, right? The people who are growing their wealth. And so let's go talk to the kids of our existing clients. That's an easy first step to go engage next generation. And what we found when we did that was we kind of used our typical approach as it relates to planning and investing. But when it came to investing specifically, what I realized is it's this part of what we do where we still sort of over explain, we oversell in those initial conversations with those prospective clients. We explain how we do things when it comes to investing their money. Whereas when it comes to planning, we're really just really good listeners. We ask great questions. We understand what's most important to them, their long-term goals, all these different things going on in their life. And we write down the answers and shape a financial plan around that. But again, with investing, it's, let me put up slides and explain how I pick, managers and put them in a portfolio and do these special things. And what I realized is when we did that with these new demographics, with the kids of the existing clients, it was essentially thanks, but no thanks. I saw how it sort of worked with the older demographics of clients, but the moment we tried to do it with next gen, it was, yeah, that's great, but who cares? I'm not here because I think you're special in how you pick stocks or pick ETFs or do whatever you think you're so great at doing when it comes to money management. I just want you to understand me. I just want to feel like you deeply understand what's in my head specifically about investing. If you're going to invest my money in the context of financial planning, don't you want to know a little bit more about what's in my head about that? So that was kind of the initial realization of that. That process was sort of broken. If we wanted to grow, we wanted to talk to these new generations of investors, I can't put up slides. I can't tell the investment story. I need to ask better questions. And that, there's more to it from there, but basically jump to me walking into my dad's office and saying, I think we need to start another company. And then ultimately that led to us doing just that and building Seeds as a solution for that moment, and then sort of the moments after that in the investing experience. So that's how we got here.
Very cool. Now, I know I had put up a question on Twitter and had a conversation about human first advice. And I love putting those kind of questions out there because everybody approaches it from a different angle. You know, an advisor may approach it from one area, a planning firm may approach it from another. A custodian, just had a conversation with a custodian that was talking about here's how we enable human first. And it was fascinating because they really are designed to help that advisor serve the client. So everybody kind of has their angle. You know, you're human first investing. When I think human first investing, at this point, you're literally the name that pops into my head. So when you hear what is human first, how do you apply human first? You know, how do you approach that?
It goes back to that, we sort of take it literally, that first moment. And as an industry, we've had this sort of trend of, despite the fact that we don't do it when it comes to holistic planning, investing sort of the last bastion of where we want to explain first. We want to put ourselves first. We want to show you our credentials and how we, again, how we pick managers, all the things we were doing in our own business is still kind of how we generally have done it. And so we take it literally, meaning put the human first. Take yourself out of the equation of how, you are doing money management. The client arguably doesn't care. So put them first. Ask questions. Basically, don't put up the slides. Ask better questions. And as an industry in general, I think we've, the discovery process as it relates to specifically who you are as an investor, which comes again historically after we put up the slides. But even when we get to that point, it's about these sort of surface level things like risk tolerance, which is obviously incredibly important. We're fiduciaries, we're required to understand it. But there's so many other things in people's heads when it comes to, I'm going to hand my money to you as a human financial advisor to put in this thing called capital markets. Don't you want to know how I think about that? And so put them first. Ask those questions first. Literally ask them first, get the answers, and then arguably that can shape the actual portfolio solution on the other side and really put them at the center of that portfolio proposal story, if you will, and then push that out in perpetuity. How I engage that person as it relates to how their money's being managed should be shaped around the questions I asked 6 months ago in that first meeting with them about what do they care about, what interests them, what's most important to them when it comes to investing their portfolio. So yeah, we take it literally.
Now, you haven't seen my slides from 10 years ago, but I think they were pretty good, Zach. You know, I'm just saying.
I believe it. Hey, listen, we all have great investment management stories.
Slide.
Not to say they're not, pretty exciting for us, nerdier people
Totally.
in the industry, but not necessarily what why that person's walking in your door, looking for you as an advisor.
Well, what I would find after showing the slides sometimes is you get that standard response from people who were just being gracious to listen to me explain my slides, where they would say, well, I'm glad you understand all that stuff. And you realize, yeah, they just weren't following along at all, were they?
It's amazing. It's this weird psychology of we feel more comfortable explaining and selling rather than just asking the questions and listening to the answers and maybe getting into a more nuanced conversation. So it's sort of like a security blanket thing. We're scared to just put the slides away and ask the questions. But to your point, like in the room, you can read that body language. You know that they're not really paying attention, and people are generally nice, so they're going to listen and nod their head and go where you take them. But yeah, it's exciting to kind of be able to move away from that.
I think one of the challenges for advisors, and it resonates with me, I think many advisors will agree as well, is when we're talking about planning, we know that's human first, and we're applying the technical to what the person needs and wants. But if they're talking about this is what matters to me, this is what keeps me up at night, these are the things in life I want to get right, those are subjective. They can be personalized, but it still takes the technical aspect of planning where, okay, here's what we need to do, here's how we need to do it. They, in essence, delegated those decisions to me. And I'm good with that because that's my expertise. But as we go into this investment world and we start doing the human first, we're not really doing delegation much of the time. It's a little bit different. We're actually doing more collaboration. And many advisors would say, I don't want to collaborate. And they have reasons for that. Some of them justified, of course, but there's a shift I see from delegation to collaboration. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think when we talk about that, that's where advisors go and they sort of panic. Like, what are you saying? You're going to let them pick whatever random stocks to put into their portfolio, right? So you have pure, hey, we run the show as the advisors. I'm going to put up the slides, explain our process, and you're going to go in my model portfolio. And then there's the other end of the spectrum you're describing of the end client just gets to basically run the show themselves and sort of make it up. It's not that, right? At the end of the day, collaboration nets out to be more something that's on the rails that you as the advisor are running and maintaining, and as a fiduciary, making sure is aligned with long-term goals and everything that you're trying to accomplish with the client. It's the emotional connection and feeling of collaboration. And so it's somewhat a simple thesis, right? If I just ask questions and capture the answers and convey to them that I now have a deeper understanding of what's in their head around investing. So specifically, we talk about, do they want to bring values to life in the portfolio, right? Is that important to them? Where you're going to invest their money in capital markets, they don't want to empower certain corporate behavior potentially. How interested are they in thematic exposures and sort of emerging investing trends? All different behavioral inputs. How involved do they want to be in the process? What level of detail do they actually care about, and how you're talking about the portfolio? Again, doesn't dictate the actual security selection process. It paints a picture. It gives you some understanding of what's in their head, and then you can still, as the advisor, keep that portfolio on the rails. Personalize it enough, right? Have it reflect those inputs enough, while still having the North Star be their long-term objectives that they're also aligned with in the process. So that's important. It's not, hey, go do it, basically do it yourself, and you're going to dictate to me what to do. The other thing I'll just mention on collaboration is just creating that feeling, right? Not empowering them to pick the stocks, but creating the feeling that they are collaborating because you're having a conversation with them. Go figure, it's confirmation bias. They're going to be far less inclined to call you on a random day when the S&Ps may be faltering to tell you to sell the portfolio, because just that moment of collaboration early in the relationship and transparency into what you're actually putting them in on day two, they're going to stay on the rails because they participated in the process and didn't just purely delegate it because you put up those slides and explained how great you are at money management. Inherently, for the last 50 years, there's been a lack of comfort in that simply because there's no collaboration. It's, hey, this person sounds pretty smart. I'm going to give them the money. They told me how they're going to do it. But then you get those phone calls on those days when the S&P is faltering, right? And so that's the sort of net effect, I think. It builds a relationship, but it also keeps them on the rails because they participated in it.
There's power in helping the prospect or client understand that I get them and I understand them. And it's one thing to say, this is what I believe is most appropriate for you as a professional. It's another that when I ask questions, have the discussion, have the answers, and they know that I actually get them. I had someone say to me last month after a round of questions, I have a particular meeting I call a mission meeting, where what's your mission behind all this? And the lady said afterwards, wow, you really get to know your people really well. And that's something that I had never heard in decades of doing this. But as I go to a different approach, you get to that point. That's the person you're describing, where they now know that I really do understand them. And when I offer a solution, it may look like collaboration. And I guess at the core it is, but really they're fully delegating because now they know that I really do understand them. Is that what you're getting at?
That's a much better way to say it. You're exactly right. Ultimately, the net outcome is they are delegating, right? You're still the investment advisor implementing a portfolio that has some level of personalization, but it's just the process of initial collaboration that's the emotional security blanket, right? They feel, and that's really all that matters. It's so amazing. We talk to advisors every day. And those that are still sort of anchored in, I'm going to tell my script at the beginning. There's such anxiety then when you walk into your review meetings, right? Because you saw that body language on day one where they were more or less paying attention. You know it's not why you're getting hired, but you really don't know what's in their head about how you're managing their money and what products you've put them in or whatever your script was on day one. So you walk into review meetings like, are they going to be interested in this talking point? Are they going to be interested in this talking point? Do I need to talk about the Fed? Do I need to go deep on performance? And my dad would admit, who's been doing it for 40 years, you have clients where you spend 2 decades going into review meetings like, I hope they like this speech, as opposed to, I describe it as, it feels like I have the answer. I'm walking into a test and I have the answers to the test because I literally got them the day I met this person. I just asked the questions. How do you want to be dealt with? Do you want to bring values to life? Are you interested in emerging trends? How do you want to oversee what's going on in the portfolio or not? What do you want to talk about? What's most interesting to you? What's most important to you? And what do you want to talk about? This is going to, of course, be driven by your goals, your objectives. The asset allocation is built around that. But yeah, if you ask the questions, you hear the answers, then that anxiety every time you go have conversations just doesn't need to be there on both sides. So it's really empowering. And yeah, it's just kind of one of those things. Like, you give up the slides. That's the hard part, right? Telling the story on the front end of the relationship feels scary. But if you take that leap of faith, it is incredibly worth it, in our opinion. So it's exciting.
I agree as well. Appreciate the work you're doing. I'm glad you saw a problem that needed to be solved. And, I think from the advisor standpoint, just the ability and the technology required to have human first investing is fairly new. That level of customization, right? I want to say wasn't as easy. I remember when I first looked at this topic, maybe 15 years ago, it was clunky. So yes, you could do screening, but it was just clunky. And we've come a long way where you can get much more specialized, and you may lead with collaboration, but in most cases it's going to be delegation, but it's human first, it's appropriate. So looking forward to seeing the work that you're going to do. We'll see you at Shift, I guess, in a few weeks.
Can't wait. Thanks so much.
Thanks for being on the show, Zach Conway from Seeds.
Thank you for listening to Shift with Ross Marino. Please visit humanfirst.live to learn more. This show is for general information purposes only and is not intended to provide recommendations or advice. Speak with a legal, tax, or financial advisor before making any decisions. Past performance references are historical and do not guarantee future results.